and I'll be the moderator for tonight's program, where we will meet the 3 Democrats who are running for District 15 in the U.S. House of Representatives to unseat the current Republican Ross Spano. Ooh, ah, boo. Okay, first, some tips to watch the Zoom meeting. During the program, everyone's camera and microphone will be turned off except for mine and the 3 candidates. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see an option for seeing these video screens in either grid mode or speaker mode, and we suggest speaker mode so you can see each person in as large a view as possible. Also, at the bottom of your screen, you will see a button titled Chat. You may send questions that you would like us to ask the candidates, and our caucus secretary, Laura Jane Reedus, will organize and pass them on to me. We have a tight schedule, so we may not get to everyone's questions. And now, before I introduce our candidates, let me give you all a bit of background. And let me share my screen again. And share. Okay, so as you can see, District 15 is pretty much equally divided geographically between eastern Hillsborough County, the northwest portion of Polk County, and the southern part of Lake County. Until recent years, this area of Hillsborough County has been heavily Republican, but now with the rapid population growth being younger and more suburban, registered Democrats are the majority. This is a House seat that is a high priority on the list of flippable seats. It would be great to have a Democratic House delegation from Florida instead of Republican, and we are only 1 seat away from being the majority. Being that this is the LGBTA caucus, our questions tonight will be focused on our community's concerns. Our format for the meeting will be as follows. Individual introductions by each candidate of 1.5 minutes each, followed by 6 to 10 questions where each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to respond. And finally, a wrap up with each candidate giving us 1.5 minutes of why they are the best candidate in this race. All U.S. House Democratic candidates seeking endorsement will be obtaining their endorsement questionnaire issued by the Florida State LGBTQ+ Caucus, of which we are a chapter. So that endorsement questionnaire is coming from the state chapter, not from us. My questions are compiled partially from that questionnaire. After the close of this program, the membership will vote to make a recommendation to the state caucus of which candidate we feel should receive the state caucus's endorsement. And more on that process will be covered later when we're in our general meeting. Candidates, do you have any questions before we begin?
You're all muted.
I can't see if they do at this point.
Okay.
Nobody had any questions? Yes, no? Okay, good.
They're actually muted right now, but go ahead.
One reminder that this program is being live streamed and recorded for public viewing and caucus records. And so we shall begin with the candidates' self-introductions, beginning in alphabetical order with Alan Cohen, then State Representative Adam Hattersley, and finally Jesse Philippe. It's great to see you all, although it would obviously be nicer in person, and I would like to be able to see everybody. Anyway, Alan, would you please begin? You have 1.5 minutes.
Well, good evening, everyone. And it's so great to be back in front of you and to, again, hopefully be endorsed and supported by this caucus like I was back in 2014. In fact, I derived our energy back in 2014 from this very caucus, which was one of the first to help our campaign. And Sally, it is so good to see you again. I think the one thing that we could all agree on is that Ross Spano has got to go. He is a cheater, and we know that. He admits to that. The question that is before us all is who is the best candidate to take him on? And I believe I am. I was asked to enter this race because if you recall, I have spent my entire career as an investigative journalist. I'm the guy who uncovered Jim Norman, who was a county commissioner who was running for state senate, that he took $500,000 from a wealthy businessman to buy a vacation home, and he wound up being kicked off the ballot because of that. And when you think about who is the best person to prosecute the case against Ross Spano, it is somebody like me who has been going after corrupt politicians for over 30 years. But that's just the politics of it. The other half of it. The other half of it is about our values. And Patty and I have raised our children, and we have been part of this community for so many years. And we have accomplished so much in terms of marching with this caucus, in terms of supporting this caucus, exactly what we're going to do when we reach Congress.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. Thank you for going first, by the way, helping me test my timer. Did that work okay for you? That I had to interrupt at the 10-second mark? Is that okay?
He's already muted, but
that works all right? Okay.
Yeah, you'll have to.
All right. So where am I? I'm about to introduce our next candidate, which would be Adam Hattersley. We also want to thank you for your editorial regarding the lack of interest of the Republican portion of our state legislators to call a special session regarding the unemployment compensation program and other COVID-19 issues. So Adam, thank you for that. Are you ready to start?
He's waiting to be unmuted.
And actually, we're not getting Adam's video either.
Oh. Christy Hattersley.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me on. Sorry for about that little snafu. Christy's office is lit much better than mine, and you know what? I'm happy to see everybody. I can't tell if you can tell, but I've been smiling. This group has really got me where I am today. You know, I think one of the best reasons that I should be running for this seat. You know, not only was I heavily recruited on a state and national level by all the current members of Congress, but as the only Democrat who has won in this area in over 20 years, as the only one with experience in the legislature. And
look at Ricky. Look at Ricky.
Somebody's still talking. But my career was spent in service. You know, I did 8 years in the United States Navy. I volunteered to go to Iraq with an Army unit during the height of the war, so another sailor could stay home. You know, my life hasn't been, you know, cushy behind a desk. It's been in service. You know, even after the Navy, I've been a member of the Selective Service Board. Now, as you know, a member of the Florida House of Representatives, and been there fighting for these issues in the LGBT community, because you guys remember why I ran in the first place, and that was because Rhonda Storms was running in the 59th. Everyone remember her? Yeah. And there was not only no Democrat, but no ally running in the 59th. Even though I was projected to lose, we fought through. Members of this caucus helped get me elected, and I'm excited to have you help me get elected again.
All right, thank you, Adam. Thanks very much. And now we have Jesse, and Jesse Philippe, welcome to our caucus. And would you please tell us all about yourself?
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. And great job pronouncing my name. That's usually hard for people in the beginning. Well, I'm going to tell you, I wasn't recruited to run. What I saw was that my community needed a voice. And what I saw that we were lacking a lot of experience in our community. So a little bit about myself. I'm from the community. I'm local. I went to King High School. And after I graduated high school, I joined the Marines. And I served in the Marine Corps for 6 years. There I did a tour in Iraq, and then I came back and I continued to want to fight and do service. So I went to law school, got my Juris Doctorate degree from Western Michigan. While I was in law school, I did several public sector jobs. I worked for a little bit of time in the state attorney's office. I worked at the Department of Children and Families, and I worked for the Department of Revenue, all with the state of Florida. So I spent most of my adult life giving myself to public sector, and I believe in the public sector. I'm from this community. I believe the reason why I am the best candidate, because I feel that if I have more experience in terms when it comes to this community. I've been a part of this community for over 20 years, and I've seen this community grow from where it was just a little Brandon. It was, wasn't a lot of people out here, to Riverview being packed and full. And I understand what. Okay, so I understand what this community's been through, and I understand what we're gonna take to get to for the next 10, 20 years. So that's why I'm asking for your support, and I'm looking to be a champion for you guys. Like I said, you guys are my fellow people in our community, and I continue want to give back to it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jesse. Thanks very much. Okay, so now we know who all three candidates are. We're going to start with our questions. The first question tonight is, could you describe your past or current involvement in LGBTQ organizations and/or LGBTQ civil rights actions? This can include engaging in action to get LGBTQ protective legislation passed. And we'll go down the line in the same order that we had the introductions. We'll start with Alan Cohen.
Well, thanks for that question. And the fact is, I have been working for LGBTQ equality long since it became cool to do so. I mean, I didn't just hop on the scene in the last year or two. If you recall, I took a position for marriage equality in Florida long before it was cool to, in that you had public officials doing so. And not only that, but my family and I have marched in the Pride Parade in Tampa, even before other public officials agreed to do so. And it wasn't always easy. And Dave, I don't know if you might remember this, but there was some pushback in our synagogue about the synagogue's involvement in terms of marching in that parade. But Patty and I did just that, and we brought our children, because this is not an issue for us. This is not an issue that's important because we may have a family member or a friend. This is the way that Patty and I were brought up by our parents. And these are the values that we have shared with our children. And, Sally, you brought up the issue in terms of conversion therapy and and how Hillsborough County has tried to take that on. I actually did a program on this very subject on ABC 7 with somebody who specialized in conversion therapy and with members of the LGBT community. And we stopped that kind of legislation from being brought to Sarasota just a couple of years ago.
Okay, great, thanks. Time. All right. Adam, if you would go ahead next, please.
Well, I already kind of mentioned it, but as you all know, LGBTQ issues are what got me into politics in the first place. I was asked to run for the state house in the 59th, basically to stop Rhonda Storms and her anti-LGBT agenda. And it's not just based on the issues. It's personal for me. My brother-in-law is gay, and he and his husband adopted a baby here in Florida, and I didn't want my niece to grow up thinking that there's anything wrong with her family, because there's not. And this caucus was the first caucus that I joined when I started running in 2018, and you were there for me in that first race. Again, I think some of my most faithful volunteers are on this chat. You came and walked and knocked on doors with me every weekend. And I'm sorry, but well, not really sorry, that I stole one of your board members, Amy Bullock, to become my first legislative aide, and she's now on the campaign. And quite frankly, again, you guys are why I'm here. And you know what? I've remembered that as a legislator. In Tallahassee, we don't have an official LGBTQ caucus, but I've kind of become an honorary member of the unofficial one. Anytime something is happening with the community, the people invited are always the 3 LGBTQ reps, Carlos Guillermo Smith, Jennifer Webb, Chevron Jones, and then Anna Escamani and me. I'm honored to stand with them. I've put myself, I put my name, I put my reputation, I put my respect in front and fought for these issues. And one of the things I'll do when I get to Congress, one of the first things I do is become an official member of the Congressional LGBTQ Caucus.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks very much. All righty, are we ready for Jesse?
All right, so I want to start off by saying that, I I want to talk about what I can actually do. I mean, I know it's great to talk about, how our families contributed, but I feel like a lot of politicians nowadays don't actually talk about how do we solve the problem. So for me, one of the first things that I'm going to do when I go to Congress is to make the LGBTQ plus community a protective class. This is very similar to what we saw during the 1960s during affirmative action. This allowed the courts to step in to address issues that are affecting people who are being discriminated against. And I believe that these same basic civil rights should apply to the LGBTQ plus community. And one of the things that I want to do is make sure that we introduce a bill in Congress to make sure that we make the LGBTQ plus community a protective class, because it's important to not only, say that I marched and I walked and say that you guys, we've been there for me, but it's about what are we doing to move the movement forward. And I believe that the best way to do that is introduce bills and laws that addresses the issues that are plaguing them, like affordable, the housing crisis, where you essentially have, people being discriminated against when purchasing homes, issues such as adoption, where LGBTQ plus people in the community that's also being discriminated against. These are how we move the movement forward, by addressing these issues and attacking these issues. And that's what I think that I can do to help the community. Go on.
Great. Thank you very much, Jesse. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. How familiar are you with current LGBTQ plus issues, such as sensitivity to pronouns and the issue of gender identity versus sexual orientation? Can you talk to us about how much you know about the LGBTQ community in that regard? And actually, let's go backwards. Let's start with Jesse again.
So I understand it's an issue, and it's one of the biggest things that I think that can address that issue is more training in our workplace, more training in our school system. Well, our campaign, we've talked about this issue and we think that the best thing that we can do is introduce something called ally training, which is common for most people who are in the community. But these ally classes will essentially educate people on the proper pronunciation, the different groups, and also teach people how do you address someone, who in the community, and how you essentially, and mannerisms that affect essentially any way we talk to people, because these are the most important things to me. I feel like training is the most important, because right now, the biggest thing is people lack of knowledge about the community, and I feel like our school systems can be on the forefront of that, and I also believe that our workplace can be in the forefront of that to addressing those issues. So that's why I believe can help.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay. Going backwards down the list, Adam, would you please address that issue?
Sure. Well, like I said, equality issue.
Familiarity.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, like I said, equality issues are important to not just me, but my wife and family. It's personal to us. And actually, I'm going to brag on my wife a little bit. You all know Christy. She's actually the chair of the Tampa Bay LGBT Chamber. She's actually just awarded by the Tampa Business Journal as one of the top allies of 2020. So yay, good job, Christy. And we find it very important to not just talk about these issues, but to proverbially walk the walk as well. Like I said, we've been members of this caucus since I first ran for office, and just about every monthly meeting, whether we're in campaign season or not, either me or Christy or a member of my staff is always there. In fact, amongst my campaign staff, I have 2 team members, both of whom identify as LGBTQ, and one of whom identifies as gender nonconforming. And I've learned a lot from both of them, and having them be a part of this campaign. And really, when it comes down to it, ultimately, government it doesn't belong anywhere telling anybody who they are. And when we were in Tallahassee, I made sure, I'm sorry to name drop her, but when we were up there, Amy and I first got up there, to let me know if she got any flack or heard anything, because I first off, I know she would take care of it, but I want to make sure that I took care of it.
Okay. Great, thank you. And Alan.
LGBT.
He's not unmuted yet, Dave. There. Start again, Alan.
Okay. The first thing is we are all part of the LGBTQ community, and we all have members of our family and our friends who are part of LGBTQ. That's not the issue. I mean, I could also boast about members of my campaign who are gender non-conforming, whatever term that you want to use for it. That's really not the point. The point is to find not just somebody who's going to vote the right way or file a bill. The point is to find an advocate who is experienced making a case and pushing until it comes to fruition. And that's what I've spent my entire career doing. And that's why I dedicated so many hours of a program that I was the anchor and managing editor to these very issues, giving the ability of members of a community, also youth who are fighting for the right to use whatever bathroom they wanted to use in their public schools. It's the reason why I push not only to bring these issues to the forefront, but it is something that I can be not a leader and an advocate and a trained communicator on these issues on Capitol Hill. And when in the final analysis, that's what's important. The important is to find a legislator and a member of Congress who not only has the experience in terms of speaking truth to power, but in the ability to actually communicate that.
Okay, great, thank you very much, Alan. Let me see which question I'm going to ask next. So this is kind of a general question. Can you explain how the House of Representatives actually works? Have you ever attended a session of the House? Have you discussed becoming a member of the House with any current House member? Let's start with Adam, and then we'll go from Adam to Alan to Jesse, okay? Adam? Do I need to repeat the question to anybody? Everybody's still muted, Dave.
Okay, there we are. Well, this is a great question. It's going to take a lot longer, 90 seconds to answer it fully. So I'll just kind of try to trim it up. It's really hard to understand how any political body works until you actually become a part of one. You know, candidates say all sorts of things on the campaign trail that they'll fight for this or talk to this, but it's an entirely different situation when you actually have to sit in the chamber and push the button on hard votes. And I'm the only one in this race who has that experience. And I think that's very important. As far as current members of the House, I think I've spoken to about 50 members, many of them veterans. Do keep in mind, everyone who flipped a Trump district in 2018, every single one was a veteran under 50. But about 50 of them that I've had meetings with are on the phone. They've called me last year, encouraging me to run for office. And you know, Amy will tell you that I kept getting calls from the House floor from people like Connor Lamb, Max Rose, Jason Crow, all asking me to run. I sat next to Val Demings at Carlos Guillermo Smith's wedding. She asked me to run. And, you know, back in 2018, when I was running for the state house, I actually came and introduced some of you guys to Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who came and did an event for me. And, you know, when I endorsed him for president. And that's when I was in the decision process of if I should run for Congress. And I asked him if I should. And I swear to God, I hope you don't mind. Again, I was a sailor. I shit you not. He looked at me in the face and he said, "I need you in Washington." And that's why I'm doing this. You know, I wasn't planning on running for Congress. I was going to run for re-election to the House. But just like I answered the call to serve in 2000 when I joined the Navy, and again in 2006 when I volunteered to go to Iraq, and in 2018 when you guys asked me to run against Rhonda Storms, I'm answering the call again. Nearly every current member of Congress has called and asked me to run.
Thank you. By the way, before I go any further, does everybody hear the chimes when they go off? Because, all right, I'm going to hold them close to my microphone, but that's the actual 1 minute and 30 seconds. So, Alan, would you care to go next, please?
Give me 1 second. Unmute him. Okay, there he is. Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Okay, I don't know if I'm up on the screen there. because I see Dave, I see your lovely face. But we could all name drop, and I could drop all the names of all the folks that in Congress that asked me to run, and I'm so honored that actually Congressman Patrick Kennedy, the former chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, not only helped me launch my campaign, but is going to be joining us tomorrow night on Facebook. And yes, I have been to Congress, and it started a long time ago when I went to the House Armed Services Committee to point out to its chairman that defective parts were getting on Black Hawk helicopters flown by our troops, which resulted in me winning the Peabody Award for, in the words of the Peabody folks, safeguarding the lives of U.S. military personnel. I returned to Congress when I found an Army soldier who was shot in Iraq, in Baghdad, with a bullet still lodged in his hip, and he was denied benefits by the VA because the Army lost his medical records. And I found his commander in Baghdad and proved to the House that he was injured in Baghdad, and got the VA's decision reversed. And I went back to and worked with Gus Bilirakis, the congressman, to get a law passed after I discovered there were local businesses that were taking advantage of elderly vets and charging them thousands to apply for VA benefits that were free. I worked with Gus Bilirakis to get a bill through the House to put teeth in the federal law. So this is not about name dropping, and this is not about bills filed. This is actually about a lifelong history of accomplishments.
Thank you very much, Alan. Okay. All right, Jesse, are you ready?
One second, I'll get it up.
All right, can you hear me? Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not going to name drop because I don't know that many people in the U.S. House Congress. I'm not going to lie. But what I can tell you is I do know how the U.S. Congress works. I'm the only candidate here with a law degree. So I'm pretty sure the legislature stands for people who make laws. And that's what I specialize in, obviously having a law degree. I'm going to answer the question up front. I mean, Congress is just like any other place of business where you have to get something done. It's about negotiating. It's about understanding that the person on the other side wants something and that you want something. And then when you come together, that's how you create laws. And we have to get out this ideal of, well, I'm going to say all these blustering things for votes, because the reality is most people, when you get to Congress, you have to be able to negotiate. It's the most crucial thing. So for me, my experience, I worked a little bit in the private sector. I worked at Verizon. One of the things that I did at Verizon was telecommunications sales. I was #1 in the country. And the reason I was able to accomplish that is because I was great at negotiating, because everybody wants something and we have to determine what is it that people want. And that's a prosperous America. We want to move America forward. We don't want to talk about who I know and what's, this person and that. We want to talk about how can we move the country forward. And that's what I'm going to bring to Congress, a negotiation skill, a business skill. And I know my time went out, but that's why I believe you should be doing in Congress. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me see. Next question. Do you support or oppose the Equality Act to amend the Civil Rights Act, which will provide protection for individuals from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity with regard to employment, public accommodations, housing, etc.? That's, do you support or oppose the Equality Act? And could you tell us a little bit about why or why not? Why don't we start with Alan again and go Alan, Adam, Jesse.
Absolutely. And it's really important to note how this particular administration has rolled back protections for the LGBT community in a whole host of areas. It began with President Trump restricting transgender Americans from serving their country, which is incredible that was done, despite the fact that the Joint Chiefs of Staff opposed him doing that. But also, if you remember, the former Attorney General Jeff Sessions then went to work. He went to town going through the recent law in terms of taking about away protections, including protections that required doctors in hospitals and in offices not to discriminate against somebody who may be gay or transgender. And that has led to concerns about whether people will be dying and or have died. I often say that being a member of Congress is not just about how you vote. It's about being an advocate. But the fact is, it's going to be really important when this administration comes to its end, as we all hope in November, that we codify the protections that you were just talking about, so no future president can do what this president and this administration has done.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I think it was Adam next, please.
That's a simple question. A simple answer: yes, I'd absolutely support the Equality Act. Passing the Equality Act would go a long way to resolve some of these issues at the federal level. But I can say, just like 2 years ago, I stood in front of this group and I promised to co-sponsor and fight and advocate for the Competitive Workforce Act, and I did exactly that. And beyond that, I was also I led the charge and sponsored, put my name on the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act 2 years in a row. I was also sponsored and fought for the ban on forced conversion therapy for minors. And the only one who can say that I put my name on things and actually stood with my own name and political future in the firing line and fought for these issues. And like I stood in front of you again 2 years ago, promising to fight for the Competitive Workforce Act. I fulfilled that promise. And I can promise you right now that in Congress, I will not just fight for and support, but I will co-sponsor the Equality Act. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you have more time.
Okay.
If you had.
And just for contrast, our current Congressman, Ross Spano, who is my real opponent, he voted no on the Equality Act. And that is something we can do much better in the floor of the 15th, and something that I will do much better for you. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Okay, Jesse?
Thank you. Yes, the answer is very simple. Yes, I will support it. I already, since you gave a solution to this, we have to add the LGBTQ plus community to a protective class and essentially in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the enforcers of the laws. This allows for any discrimination to be looked on by the courts to make sure that it is stopped. And in addition to that, we have to create legislation that goes even further than equal rights amendment. Because guess what? That was written in 1960. There are things now that are affecting people that weren't covered back then. So we need to go further and create legislation. And like I said, it goes back to understanding the vital fundamental principle, which is, how do we get things done? It's great to say that I did this, I did that, but it's about getting things done. It's about having solutions. It's about having actual, accomplishments. It's great to essentially say that, hey, guess what? I've done this for previous years, but it's not okay to say that, guess what? I didn't accomplish it, but I said something. That's the most important thing to me. I'm a person that when I say something, I make sure I deliver. And I make sure when I say that I'm going to try and fight, I'm going to make sure I fight, and I'm going to make sure that it gets done. So my answer is yes, that I am definitely going to fight. And I'll definitely be a champion to make sure it gets done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I have a number of specific questions here about different acts that are out there in the U.S. House, and I'm sure you're going to tell me, all of you are going to tell me that you're going to support them all. But I'm going to name a few of them. There's the Uniting American Families Act, which would allow a person to sponsor their same-sex partner for immigration purposes. There is the Safe Schools Improvement Act and the Student Non-Discrimination Act to ensure students are protected from discrimination and harassment in schools. And I'm going to say that, yes, I'm assuming you're going to say yes to those kinds of things. But let's go specifically on that issue of the student protection. At the state level, there's a lot of happening where religious freedom, quote unquote, is coming into play to allow students in schools to be discriminated against when the schools are being funded publicly. And there's discrimination in the shopping, workplace, whatever you want to call it, because based on religion, they are allowed to just deny an LGBTQ person services. How can the House interfere and stop that from happening? How can the House actually stop the courts from allowing these kinds of things to go forward? I hope that question is more clear than it's come out. And Adam, I'm gonna ask you to start, and then we're gonna go Adam, Jesse, and Alan.
All right, well, let me just start by saying that I completely oppose any effort to legalize discrimination against the LGBTQ community in the name of religious liberty. You know, there's a difference between having deeply held religious convictions and attempting to impose those convictions on others. You know, for instance, we don't allow an OBGYN to refuse care to an unwed mother. You know, we don't allow cake bakers to refuse to make cakes for interfaith couples. You know, participating in our economy, participating in our society means respecting the individual liberty of your neighbor. And you know, LGBTQ people are no less worthy of dignity and freedom from discrimination than anyone else. We fought this fight before in the past. We're on the right side of history on this one. And you know, we talked about passing the Equality Act. We talked about you know, banning forced conversion therapy. I don't know if you know, there was another bill in the state house this past year that would criminalize doctors for treating trans youth. And there were about 6 of us that we banded together. We used the media, we used you know, friends, we used lobby groups, and Carlos Guillermo Smith, Jennifer Webb, Chev Jones, Amy Mercado, Anna Escamani, and I. And we defeated that bill. And you know, we did what we could, and we protected these kids so that they can get the proper medical treatment that they need. And you know, so we fought this fight in the past, and we can do it again. And we're on the right side of history in this one. And that's absolutely something we can do in Congress, and that's part of the Equality Act.
Great, thank you.
Who next again, Peter?
I think we're gonna go to Alan and then Jesse.
Jesse's up. Go ahead, Jesse.
Me or Alan? I'm confused. Okay,
Oh,
it's me.
go ahead, Jesse.
All right. So
Okay,
no, it's fine. What I was gonna say is President Trump has been attacking us. You know, he's been putting judges that are anti the movement, essentially. And you know, this is why it's important to have a U.S. House to tackle this issue by creating legislation, because a lot of people don't know this, but the only way you can override the Supreme Court is through legislation and bills. So I essentially state that we should create bills that go further than just the Safe School Act. Because as I alluded to earlier in my opening, I stated that we need allied training programs. These training programs need to be integrated into our school system so that we can better have a conversation with our students, so that not only does it not, you know, for discrimination purposes, for bullying purposes, teaching, understanding, because right now our politics has been less and less about empathy. It's been more and more about I'm better than you, I'm stronger than you, and you're weaker than me. I'm always going to be the candidate that always talks about empathy and love, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing to us. So I believe that we need to create an allied training program for our schools so that they have a sense of a guideline by the federal government on what to educate our students on so they can help in discrimination in the workplace. I believe in the Christian principle of love thy neighbor, and I believe we can continue to do that. And how you do that is by educating and teaching people how to love. Thanks. I appreciate it. Sorry, timer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Okay, Alan.
Well, you did a great job in terms of ticking off the issues that this state legislature and this governor and the governor before have tried to get away with, which brings up the issue, quite frankly, of getting elected to the state legislature and then just a couple months after opening up your district office, deciding to leaving a position that you were just elected to. And that's not leadership. That's not leadership by any stretch of every imagination, because this is not just about getting the job. It's about getting the job done. You know, I uncovered this story of defective parts on Black Hawk helicopters. It made big national news, but I stayed on that for 4 years until I was able to come up with enough evidence to show that aircraft were being forced to crash. And it was because of that things change. So it's not just a matter of voting the right way or being on the right side. It's not just about, as I said, getting the job, but staying along enough there to fight. There are so many issues that are worth fighting for in Tallahassee. And I think it rubs people the wrong way that just a couple of months after getting there, you're leaving for something else, or you trying to leave for something else. I think that's not what we're looking for in the congressman, and I don't think that's a winning recipe to beat somebody like Rob Spano.
Hey, great. Thanks, Alan. How about a question regarding the, Obamacare? How will you help to strengthen? Let's go into healthcare as a topic. If Obamacare goes away, so many people lose health insurance, and one of the main things in Obamacare at the moment was a non-discrimination for insurance companies or medical professionals to deny services to LGBTQ people. What is your take on healthcare? How should we be fixing the healthcare system? What will you do when you get to the House regarding healthcare? And let's start with Jesse and go to Jesse, Allen, Adam. Okay, does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay.
So I love this topic of healthcare. What I think that is so great about our system is that we are a system design of ideas. So currently right now, our VA system is in every major city. So what my idea on healthcare is that we build a civilian component attached to every VA hospital that provides a low cost medical care for individual families and people who are of middle class support income. So this would take away the insurance companies and allow for an option where the government is providing healthcare to people directly and remove the insurance companies altogether. Now, this is a radical idea, but the ideal is like we have an existing system already in place, but we can take that existing system and add to it to make sure it helps the average family in America. So that's my idea for healthcare, is to build on the existing VA system and go further by providing it for people who are middle class and poor wages. That's my idea. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. I think I forgot what I said.
Alan, yeah.
Does anybody know who's going next? I think it was Alan, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
firstly, there are a couple things to keep in mind, I did a FaceTime program a week or two ago with my great friend who just got married, Christopher Brantley, to to a great guy, and we focus our entire hour on these very issues. And it's really important to keep in mind that when it comes to health insurance, there are certain disadvantages that members of the LGBTQ community have. Number one is access to healthcare, because in a higher percentage of people who work in the service industry are LGBTQ and are too often not covered by health insurance. And also pre-existing conditions, whether it is smoking or other medical conditions like that, are, there's a higher percentage of members of the LGBT community. But when it comes to Obamacare, which is your original question, number one, this does have to be fixed. And the thing that I have been talking about since the beginning of this campaign, that everyone who is watching this tonight can understand and is dealing with, is the fact that most of these plans have for the $6,000 deductible.
Michael Womack.
I don't know if that's going on.
Okay, we are okay now.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but
Yeah. Anyway.
Most of these plans carry $4,000 to $6,000 deductibles. And I think you all know exactly what I'm talking about, that you have to spend $4,000 to $6,000 before the healthcare plan pays only 80% of your claim. This means that so many men and women and children have to make a decision that when they're sick, whether or not they could afford to go to the doctor. This has got to change. This is what I am going to focus on like a laser beam when I get to Congress, because this goes to how ordinary working and middle class Americans are able to survive in this economy, which does not work for us.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. And we're moving to Adam.
Well, I support a universal health care coverage. America, we're the richest country in the world, and no American should go without health insurance. We need to make health insurance affordable, and anyone who can't afford it should be enrolled in Medicare cost-free. There's actually a large group of veterans, younger veterans under the age of 50 in Congress that are working across both sides of the aisle, who understand how to put country before party, just like I've been doing for the past 2 years in the state legislature, and how to work together and try to get the bureaucracy out of what we currently have to make that happen. That's why I've always supported Medicaid expansion here in Florida to help our less fortunate. And God willing, in January 2021, we'll have a new Democratic president, we'll have a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic House, and you can count on me to help support and fight for that Democratic plan to deliver healthcare to all Americans in an affordable way.
Okay, thank you.
next will be Jesse, right?
I think Jesse spoke first on that question. Jesse, did I give you a chance to answer that question?
I was the first one to speak on that one.
Yeah, I thought you were. Yes. Yes, Dave. I'm just trying to decide what question to ask next.
Okay, that's the end of that one. Okay, sorry.
I think I'm going to make, Well, you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and go to the closing. I think we've kind of covered all the issues. I don't have any questions from the audience that are different from what I have already asked. So I'm going to let you all wrap up and tell us why we should be endorsing you as the LGBTQ plus candidate. And we'll go down the list the way we started with Alan, followed by Adam, followed by Jesse.
Well, number one, I want to thank everyone for watching tonight. I am so happy to be here, and I look forward to receiving your support once again. The one thing I hope that we all take from this is patriotism. The other side likes to wave the flag, but I want everybody to know as we go out from here tonight that we are the patriots, and we embrace the kind of patriotism that John Cena talked about in Love Has No Labels, love beyond age, disability, sexuality, race, religion, and other labels, because at any time that we question anybody about their labels, we're not really being patriotic, are we? It's not just about talking the talk, which is why, I take a great deal of pride that myself and my wife and my children have marched alongside this community, our community, through, for years. We've been a part of the fabric of this community. And when it gets down to this election and the efforts to defeat Ross Spano, number one, yes, it has to go to who is in the best position to do so and make the case against him and his corruption. And I've been doing that for 30 years, speaking truth to power, taking on large defense contractors and dirty politicians. And it's about 30-year record of actually getting things done, not just filing bills, not about just speaking out, about being an advocate that has brought real change to this community, this state, and this nation.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, Adam?
Thanks so much for having me. And one thing, Alan, that I think that you said tonight is right. We have to choose who the best candidate is. As the only Democrat who's won in this district in over 20 years, as the only one, who's had that support, I think I am by far the best candidate to take on and take out Ross Spano. I've had a lifetime of service, and I'm glad that people were able to get some reports about bad Black Hawk helicopter parts, but I was out there riding those Black Hawks. People say what they're gonna do, but the really only way you can tell is by looking back at their past and their history to see what they've done, to give you an indicator of what they will actually do. So besides riding on those Black Hawks and raising my hand and putting my name up for dangerous duty, I've also stood up and put my name and my reputation on the line for not just this community, but for all Floridians for the past couple of years. We have a great shot at flipping this seat. We've raised far more money than any Democrat ever has in a primary already coming into the August primary. We're in a weird situation with COVID right now, but we got a lot going on. We have another town hall this week. This is on the legislative side, because we've been helping our constituents and helping people on a daily basis. Actually, I think we've helped thousands of people, especially with the unemployment process that we have going on right now in Florida. It's what you have, your record of what you have done to show what you will do. And I've shown that I will fight for this community. And I'm excited to do that when I get to Washington. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And last but certainly not least, Jesse.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, thank you. This whole debate, you've heard about a lot of stories. You heard a lot of name dropping, but every single question that I was presented today, I provided a solution. We spent the last 20, 30 years have congressmen or people who want to be in the job talk about this is what I'm going to do. But I've always, every question tonight, I've provided solutions and I've given ideas that we can push forward and win. I have experience in the public sector, the legal sector, the private sector. I also have experience in the business sector. I've served my country. I've served 6 years. I was a Marine. I was down in Iraq, walking those grounds, protecting people. My life has been about service. Now, what's important, if you guys are going to endorse, make sure that, look at your previous endorsements. Have they pushed the cause forward? Or are they just saying stuff that, hey, I introduced a bill. That's great. Did it get passed? So you need leaders who's going to say that, hey, I'm going to pass this bill and get it done. And because at the end of the day, your vote and your endorsement is not guaranteed. You want to make sure if I'm going to endorse someone that, hey, when they get up there, they can actually get things done. For example, like I said, I worked in business. I know how to negotiate. I know how to get things done. And that should matter. I mean, our campaign, I've told every volunteer, we'll focus on us. And what the most important thing in our campaign is community. Focusing on building our community with experienced leaders. So I know my time is up. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say, I want you guys to join our campaign. Jesse Philippe, we want you to come out there. We want your support. Thank you, man, Peter. All right. Have a good day.
Great. Well, I just don't know how to thank all of you for helping me get through this and for your wonderful responses.